In the year 2087, Earth hummed with excitement. After decades of dreaming, humans had finally done it. They'd built their first colonies on distant planets. The Moon had its thriving cities. Mars bloomed with new settlements, and even Jupiter's moons housed research stations. Dr. Ha Jin stood at her lab window in Seoul, watching transport ships glide between the clouds like silver birds. She worked as a xenobiologist, someone who studied the possibility of alien life. For years, her job had been mostly theoretical, imagining what other life forms might look like. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning. The sky tore open above every major city on Earth. Not literally, but that's what it looked like. Massive. Shadows blocked out the sun as enormous ships descended through the atmosphere. These weren't like anything in human movies or imagination. They were organic looking, like giant beetles made of dark metal and pulsing lights. The ships moved with impossible grace, completely silent. Commander In-ho was leading a training exercise in the mountains when the alerts came through. His radio crackled with panic-filled voices from Seoul, New York, London, Tokyo, everywhere. Unknown vessels over the city. They're not responding to any communication. Sir, our scanners can't even get a proper read on them. He raced back, to headquarters, his jeep bouncing over rough mountain roads. When he arrived at the military base, chaos greeted him. Screens showed the same impossible sight repeated across the globe. Alien ships hovering over human cities like storm clouds. Ha Jin was in her lab when the first attack happened. She'd been studying tissue samples when the building shook. Not like an earthquake, this was different. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate at a frequency that made her teeth ache. Through her window, she watched as a beam of pale blue light shot down from the nearest ship toward the government district. But the light didn't destroy buildings. Instead, wherever it touched, people simply stopped moving. They stood perfectly still, staring upward with blank expressions. Some were walking their dogs. Others had been crossing streets. A mother pushing a stroller, all frozen like statues. The military response was swift but useless. Commander In-ho watched in horror as fighter jets approached the alien vessels. The planes fired their most advanced missiles, weapons that could level city blocks. The missiles struck the ships and simply vanished in sparkles of light, as if they'd hit nothing but air. The jet's electronics died next, their engines cutting out. The pilots ejected, parachuting down while their multi-million-dollar aircraft crashed into empty fields. Within 6 hours, every major military installation on Earth had gone silent. Tanks wouldn't start. Communications networks failed. Even simple radios emitted nothing but static. It wasn't destruction. It was more like the technology itself had forgotten how to work. Ha Jin noticed something else disturbing. The frozen people weren't dead. Their eyes still tracked movement, their chests rose and fell with breathing, but they couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't even blink. Medical teams who approached them became frozen too, the moment the blue light touched them. By nightfall, 30% of humanity stood motionless in the streets of major cities. The aliens, now called architects after someone noticed the precise geometric patterns their ships formed in the sky, had taken millions without firing a single shot in the traditional sense. Commander In-ho established an emergency command center in the mountains, far from the cities. Other survivors gathered there, soldiers, scientists, engineers. Dr. Ha Jin was among them, having escaped Seoul in the back of a military truck just hours before the blue light swept over her research facility. They're not random, Ha Jin explained, during their first briefing, showing her hastily gathered data on a portable screen. The architects targeted specific areas: government buildings, research centers, hospitals, universities. They're not just taking people, they're taking people with knowledge. In-ho studied the patterns. Military academies had been hit hard. So had NASA-equivalent facilities in every country. It's like they know exactly where to find our smartest people, he muttered. Ha Jin discovered something even more chilling when she managed to scan one of the frozen victims from a distance. Her instruments detected strange activity in their brains. Massive neural activity, far beyond normal levels. Whatever the architects were doing to these people, they were doing it to their minds. The first week passed in a blur of desperate planning and failed counterattacks. Every weapon humanity tried simply stopped working near the alien ships. Nuclear missiles fired from submarines never reached their targets. Their guidance systems failed and they fell harmlessly into the ocean. But Ha-Jin found something that gave her both hope and terror. Hidden in the data from her brain scans was a pattern. The architects weren't just randomly taking people, they were taking specific types of brain activity. Creative thinkers, problem solvers, people whose minds worked in unpredictable ways. They're not trying to kill us, she realized one night staring at her data. They're trying to steal something from us, something in our minds. Commander In-ho looked at the brain scans. What could we possibly have that beings with this level of technology would want? Ha-Jin's answer chilled them both. The one thing they clearly don't have themselves. 3 weeks after the invasion, Captain Min-soo crawled through the rubble of downtown Seoul. The city looked like a graveyard of machines. Cars sat dead in the streets, their electronics fried. Traffic lights hung dark. Even simple digital watches had stopped ticking. But humans were adapting as they always did. Min-soo led a small team of survivors who'd learned to avoid the blue light zones. They moved at night, communicating with hand signals and written notes. Their mission was dangerous, but necessary: capture alien technology for study. They'd found their first piece 2 days ago. An architect device had fallen from one of their ships during what looked like maintenance. It was the size of a briefcase but weighed almost nothing, made of a material that seemed to shift between metal and organic tissue. When they touched, it felt warm, almost alive. Back at the mountain hideout, Dr. Ha-Jin examined the device with Dr. Yun-ho, a computer scientist who'd escaped the capital. They'd rigged up equipment powered by car batteries and solar panels. Simple technology the architects seemingly couldn't disrupt. Look at this, Yun-ho whispered, pointing at his laptop screen. He'd managed to connect the alien device to their systems using old copper wires. The data structure is completely different from anything we've seen. Ha-Jin leaned closer. The screen showed flowing patterns of light, moving in perfect mathematical sequences. It's beautiful, she said, then caught herself. And terrifying. What they discovered next changed everything. The alien technology operated on pure logic. Mathematical equations so complex they made human supercomputers look like pocket calculators. Every decision, every action, every thought was calculated with perfect precision. There's no randomness, Yun-ho explained to Commander In-ho during their evening briefing. No chaos, no creativity. Their minds work like the most advanced computer ever built. But computers can only work with what they're programmed to handle. Ha-Jin added, We've been monitoring their communication patterns. Every message follows exact mathematical rules. They can't lie, can't joke, can't even make small talk. Everything they do serves a specific logical purpose. Over the following days, they captured more technology. Each piece revealed the same truth. The architects were masters of logic and order, but completely unable to think outside predetermined patterns. Dr. Seo-jin, a behavioral psychologist who joined their group, made another discovery. She'd been studying the frozen humans from a distance using telescopes and cameras. They're not just frozen, she announced. They're learning. Through careful observation, she'd noticed the frozen people's brain activities changing day by day. Scans showed their neural patterns becoming more organized, more mathematical. The architects aren't just taking our people, they're trying to reprogram them. Min-soo brought back more intelligence from his nighttime raids. He'd found tablets and notebooks in abandoned offices, notes from the last days before the invasion. Scientists, artists, writers, inventors, they'd all been targeted first. The architects didn't just randomly attack, he reported. They studied us. They knew exactly which humans to take. Ha-Jin connected the dots. They're dying, she said suddenly during a meeting. Their perfect logic is killing them. She explained her theory to the room full of survivors. Imagine if you could only solve problems using math. No guessing, no hunches, no sudden inspiration. You'd eventually reach problems that pure math couldn't solve. Yunho nodded slowly. Like how they can't create new technologies, they can only build more perfect versions of what they already have. The architects had mastered space travel, energy manipulation, matter conversion, all through mathematical precision. But they'd reached a dead end. They couldn't innovate anymore. Every solution led to the same logical conclusions. They've been traveling from planet to planet, Hajin continued, looking for minds that work differently, minds that can think in ways they can't. This explained everything. Why they'd taken creative people first. Why they were studying human brains so intently. Why they hadn't simply destroyed Earth. They needed what humans had. A week later, Minsu's team made an even more important discovery. In the ruins of Seoul National University, they found research notes from Dr. Kim Min-jae, a neuropsychologist who'd been studying human creativity before the invasion. His notes described something called chaotic intelligence, the human ability to make random connections, have sudden insights, and solve problems through intuition rather than logic. This is what they're after, Hajin realized reading the notes by candlelight. Our chaos, our unpredictability, our ability to look at a problem and suddenly know the answer without knowing why. Commander Inho studied the implications. So, they need us alive to steal our creativity? More than that, Dr. Seojin added. They need our minds to stay chaotic. If they turn us into logical copies of themselves, we become useless to them. This gave the humans their first real hope. The architect's perfect logic was also their weakness. They couldn't understand unpredictability, couldn't predict random actions, couldn't comprehend thoughts that didn't follow mathematical rules. Hajin looked at her fellow survivors, soldiers, scientists, artists, even a few children who'd escaped the cities. Each human brain in that room contained something the most advanced alien civilization had never possessed. We've been thinking of this as an invasion, she said quietly. But it's more like a desperate rescue mission. They're not trying to conquer us, they're trying to save themselves. The question was, could humanity use this knowledge to save themselves first? 2 months had passed since the invasion. Underground bunkers became humanity's new cities, hidden in abandoned subway tunnels, forgotten military shelters, and natural caves. The survivors worked by candlelight and battery power. The world above remained eerily quiet, with millions still frozen under the blue light. Dr. Sumin had been a neuroscientist before the invasion. Now she worked in a converted maintenance tunnel beneath the London Underground, surrounded by salvaged computer equipment and medical scanners. Her team called their project Prometheus, named after the Titan who stole fire from the gods. The answer was right in front of us, she explained to a group of engineers. We kept trying to fight them with their own rules. Logic against logic, technology against technology. But that's not who we are. Her breakthrough came from watching a young girl named Ji-hai draw pictures on cave walls. While adults worried and planned, the 7-year-old used charcoal to create fantastic creatures, half dragon, half butterfly with laser eyes and rainbow fur. It made no logical sense, but it was beautiful. That's it, Suman had whispered. Pure human imagination. Working with Dr. Tae-woo, a former video game designer, she built something unprecedented. It looked like a medical headset crossed with a computer interface. They called it a consciousness projector. The device could take the chaotic patterns of human thought, dreams, emotions, random ideas, and project them directly into architect technology. Like introducing a virus to a computer system, but worse. It was introducing chaos to pure logic. Their first test came accidentally. Min-jae, a maintenance worker, knocked over some equipment while wearing the prototype. For just a moment, his frustrated thought, "This junk never works right," projected into a nearby captured architect device. The alien technology went haywire. Lights blinked in impossible patterns. It made sounds like a broken piano mixed with whale songs. For 30 seconds, the device acted completely unpredictably before burning out entirely. It worked, Suman breathed. Human thoughts can actually damage their systems. Word spread quickly through the underground network. Commander Inho arrived within days, bringing Dr. Ha Jin and other scientists. They couldn't believe what they saw. "Show me again," Inho demanded. This time, they used a captured architect communication device. Ha-Jin wore the headset and focused on something purely human, the memory of her grandmother teaching her to make kimchi, the warm kitchen, the smell of vegetables, the patient explanations, the love in every gesture. The alien device screamed. Not electrically, but an actual sound like a living thing in agony. Sparks flew. Error messages appeared in the alien script, scrolling too fast to read. "Their systems can't process human emotions," Dr. Taewoo explained. "We think in ways they literally cannot compute." But the breakthrough came with a cost. Ha-Jin collapsed after the test, her nose bleeding, her hands shaking. The human brain wasn't designed to interface directly with alien technology. Dr. Yoon Seo, their medical officer, examined Ha-Jin carefully. "We can't do this repeatedly. It's burning out human neural pathways." They needed a better solution. Working around the clock, teams of survivors modified the consciousness projector. They created amplifiers using parts from old televisions and radios. They built neural buffers from vehicle electronics. The improved version could project multiple human minds simultaneously, spreading the load. But more importantly, it could reach architect ships directly. Their first real test happened in Paris. A team led by Captain Dong-hyun positioned themselves in the catacombs, directly beneath where an architect ship hovered. 20 survivors linked their minds through the upgraded projector. "Think of the most human thing you can," Suman instructed them. "Childhood memories, first love, favorite meals, anything that makes us uniquely us." The projection hit the ship like an invisible tsunami. Through their binoculars, scouts on the surface watched the massive vessel shudder. Its perfect flight pattern wobbled. Strange lights erupted across its surface. For 10 minutes, the ship moved erratically. Then something unprecedented happened. It started to retreat. The first architect ship ever to back away from anything. More importantly, the frozen people beneath it began to move. Not all of them, but dozens blinked their eyes, moved their fingers, even spoke. The connection was breaking. News of the success spread through the resistance network. Underground laboratories in New York, Tokyo, and São Paulo began building their own consciousness projectors. But the architects adapted quickly. Within a week, their ships developed defenses, energy shields that could block the mental projections. The resistance needed something bigger. Dr. Suman proposed building a massive projector in the tunnels beneath Mount Fuji. Using the mountain's natural structure as an amplifier, they could project the collective consciousness of thousands of humans simultaneously. "It'll be like hitting them with the entire human experience at once," she explained. "Every thought, emotion, and memory we've ever had." The project was dangerous. The energy requirements were enormous, and they'd need perfect timing. A coordinated strike on architect ships worldwide. Commander Inho looked at the plans. "How many volunteers?" "Everyone," Suman replied. "Every conscious human contributes their thoughts. We literally show them what it means to be human." As teams worked to build the ultimate consciousness projector, strange reports came from around the world. Some architect ships had stopped harvesting. Others moved away from population centers. Dr. Ha-Jin studied the patterns on recovered maps. I think some of them are starting to understand what we're showing them." The weapon was ready. But as humanity prepared to launch their chaotic thoughts at the invaders, they began to wonder, what if the architects weren't just enemies to defeat, but minds that could learn? The day humanity fought back began at sunrise in Japan. Mount Fuji's underground chambers hummed with activity as thousands of survivors connected to the massive consciousness projector. Dr. Sumin watched the screens, her hands trembling slightly. After months of preparation, they were ready. "Remember," Commander Inho spoke into his radio, addressing similar teams on every continent. "We're not just attacking, we're showing them who we are." Jiwoo, now 13, had volunteered despite being one of the youngest. She sat in a circle with other children in the Tokyo tunnel system, each wearing a modified headset. Adults often forgot that kids had the most vivid imaginations. Think of everything that makes you human. Dr. Sumin instructed the massive gathering. Your dreams, your fears, your favorite food, the way your mother laughed, the first time you fell in love. Show them all of it. The first wave launched simultaneously across the globe. From beneath Mount Fuji, the thoughts of 10,000 humans shot upward like an invisible volcano. Similar projections erupted from the Alps, the Andes, the Rockies. Everywhere the resistance had built their hidden projectors. The effect was immediate and devastating. Architect ships across Earth suddenly stopped their perfect formations. The massive vessels began moving erratically, their lights blinking in chaotic patterns. Some ships produced sounds, not the mechanical hums they'd made before, but something almost like music. Dr. Ha-Jin monitored communications from the Seoul bunker. Her equipment intercepted architect transmissions for the first time. But instead of their usual mathematical patterns, the messages contained something impossible. What seemed like questions. They're trying to understand, she reported over the radio to other resistance cells. The transmissions are confused, lost. Above ground, the frozen humans began moving again. Not all at once, but like a wave spreading outward from each projection point. People who'd stood motionless for months suddenly blinked, looked around, and collapsed from weakness but alive. The second wave was stronger. Minho led a team from beneath Los Angeles, projecting not just thoughts but music. They'd recorded every kind of human sound: laughter, crying, singing off-key in the shower, arguments between lovers, children playing. The cacophony of human life shot toward the ships like a symphony of chaos. This time something incredible happened. One of the smaller architect vessels landed gently in a park, its weapons powered down. The ship's hull opened like a flower, revealing beings inside. Dr. Yun-Soo was part of the first contact team. She approached the landed ship carefully, still wearing her consciousness projector. What she saw inside changed everything. The architects were dying, not from weapons or disease, but from something worse: stagnation. Their bodies were perfect, designed by mathematics to last forever. But their minds were trapped in endless loops of logic, unable to grow or change. "Help us," came a voice directly into her mind. It wasn't words, but pure thought, desperate and pleading. "We are lost." Communication flowed both ways through the projector. Yun-Soo felt the architect's thoughts, a mind like a vast library with every book written in the same precise style, every story ending the same logical conclusion. No surprises, no joy, no wonder. She projected back the memory of reading her first book, the excitement of not knowing how it would end. The architect's mind recoiled like it had been burned, but then reached out again, hungry for more. Around the world, more ships landed. Not landing to conquer, but landing to communicate. The consciousness projectors, designed as weapons, became bridges. Dr. Sumin established the first formal contact in Paris. 5 architects emerged from their ship, moving carefully like people walking on ice. They had tall, elegant forms that seemed to shift between solid and energy. "We came to take your chaos," the lead architect communicated through thought projection. "Your unpredictability. We believed it could save us. But you can't just take it," Sumin replied aloud while projecting her thoughts. "Chaos isn't something you steal, it's something you learn to live with." The conversations that followed were unlike anything in human history. Humans shared memories of making mistakes and learning from them. Architects projected their mathematical perfection, showing how it had become a prison. One architect, who thought identified as something like Da-un, shared their history. Once, eons ago, they had been different. They'd had emotions, made art, created through inspiration. But a great crisis had forced them to embrace pure logic to survive. Over millions of years, they'd forgotten how to be anything else. "Your chaotic mind patterns could help us remember," Da-un explained. "But we see now, we cannot simply copy them. We must learn to think as you think." Dr. Ha-Jin made a proposal that changed everything. "What if we taught you, not took away your logic, but added to it, gave you tools to embrace uncertainty. Commander, Inho was skeptical. They invaded us, took our people. Because they're desperate, Hajin replied. Look at them. Really look. The architects were failing. Their perfect logic had led them to perfect solutions that never changed. They couldn't adapt, couldn't grow, couldn't even imagine new possibilities. They were masters of the universe, but slaves to their own inflexibility. The turning point came when a child made contact. 8-year-old Seo Jun, separated from his projection group, accidentally connected directly with an architect probe. Instead of complex thoughts, he projected something simple, the joy of spinning in circles until you fell down dizzy. The probe went wildly off course, spinning in the air like a leaf in the wind. But instead of crashing, it began to dance. For the first time in millions of years, an architect creation did something completely unnecessary, something just for fun. We need each other, Daun concluded after hours of thought-sharing. You need our knowledge to reach the stars properly. We need your chaos to remember how to live. 1 year after first contact, the world transformed in ways no one had imagined. Cities rose from the ruins, but these weren't just rebuilt human settlements. They were something entirely new. Towers made of living metal twisted toward the sky, like trees, growing and changing shape based on the thoughts of their inhabitants. Dr. Hajin stood in the Seoul Integration Center, watching a group of human and architect children play together. The sight still amazed her. Human kids were teaching architect young ones to play tag, while the alien children showed humans how to make light sculptures with their minds. Today marks another milestone, she recorded into her journal. We've successfully completed the 100th Consciousness Bridge. The Consciousness Bridge had evolved from the original weapon design. Instead of projecting chaotic thoughts at the architects, it created a two-way connection. Humans could experience the perfect mathematical beauty of architect thought, while the aliens learned to embrace the wonderful messiness of human emotion. Commander Inho, now Director of Human Architect Relations, walked up beside her. Remember when we thought they were trying to steal our creativity? They were. Hajin smiled. They just didn't know there was a better way than theft. The transformation hadn't been easy. Early experiments with consciousness sharing left both species exhausted. Dr. Sumin's first successful long-term bridge with an architect named Kyondal nearly killed them both. For 3 days, they'd been trapped in each other's minds. Hajin thinking in pure mathematics while Kyondal experienced human emotions for the first time. I tasted color, Kyondal had explained afterward, still shaking. And you showed me numbers that sang. From these dangerous experiments came breakthrough technology. The new bridges, built in partnership, allowed both species to share consciousness safely. Humans gained incredible intellectual abilities, while architects learned to feel wonder, joy, and even humor. Minsu had become one of the first human architect diplomatic teams. His partner, Vinsol, was learning to appreciate things that served no logical purpose, like the way sunlight looked pretty on water. I still don't understand jokes, Vinsol admitted during a briefing, but I enjoy the surprise of not understanding them. The changes went far beyond technology. Art flourished in impossible new forms. Human painters now created with light itself, guided by architect precision. Architect mathematicians learned to solve equations through intuition, breakthrough insights that pure logic had missed. Dr. Yoon Seo established the first mixed colony on Mars. The settlement grew not through construction, but through a fusion of human imagination and architect biotechnology. Buildings that healed themselves when damaged, gardens that responded to the moods of visitors, transportation that flowed like water. But the greatest achievement was the rescue mission. The architect homeworld, Da Yoon had revealed, was dying. Not from war or natural disaster, but from stagnation. Billions of architects remained there, trapped in logic loops so perfect they'd forgotten how to change or grow. We must save them, Hajin had declared after seeing images of the homeworld. Beautiful crystalline cities locked in mathematical perfection. their inhabitants moving in precise patterns for millions of years. The journey took 6 months. The HFY joint expedition included volunteers from both species. Ha-Jin and Commander In-ho led the human team, while Da-un and Kyeon-dol represented the architects. The ship itself was a wonder, part grown, part built, powered by the combined thoughts of its crew. During the journey, humans and architects shared their complete histories, becoming true partners. The architect homeworld was both magnificent and tragic. Perfect cities stretched beyond the horizon, but nothing new had been built in 1,000 years. The inhabitants moved in patterns so precise they could be predicted thousands of years in advance. "They're not living," whispered Dr. Sumin. "They're just existing." The rescue began with a single consciousness bridge. Da-un connected with their birth community first, sharing the chaos they'd learned to love. The effect rippled outward, slowly. Ancient architects who hadn't created anything new in millennia suddenly began experimenting. They played with imperfection, introduced random elements into their equations. For the first time in ages, architect-artists created works that served no logical purpose. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Young Seo-jun, now 9, made friends with an architect child who had never seen anything grow wild. Together they planted a garden where human flowers grew alongside architect crystal formations. "Look," the architect child had said, using both voice and thought projection, "they grow however they want." This simple observation shattered millennia of rigid thinking. Across the homeworld, architects began introducing randomness into their perfect systems. Cities started growing in new directions. Art took on wild, unprecedented forms. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some ancient architects couldn't adapt and had to be gently guided into healing sleep. Others embraced chaos so enthusiastically they nearly destroyed themselves with wild experiments. Balance, Da-un learned to say, a concept that had been lost in their pursuit of perfection. The answer is balance. 5 years after the invasion, Earth and the architect worlds formed the Cosmic Alliance. New colonies spread across the galaxy, each one unique, growing through the combined strength of logic and chaos. Dr. Ha-Jin often returned to that first meeting, when she'd realized their greatest weapon was their capacity for empathy. She'd been right, but only halfway. The real power was in connection, the ability to share consciousness while remaining themselves. Standing in the observation deck of New Seoul Station, watching human and architect ships dance together between the stars, she felt the future stretching out before them. Infinite possibilities, infinite surprises, infinite chances to grow and become something neither species could achieve alone. "We didn't just save them," she whispered. "They saved us too." The universe, once cold and mathematical, now hummed with the music of two species learning to dream together.